Welcome to Mastering Modern Midlife. I'm Catherine Grace O'Connell, and this show is powered by the Forever Fierce Revolution. I am so delighted to introduce my guest today. Sheri Salata is a writer, a producer, a co-founder of thepillarlife.com, a brand new podcast, and is in her own process of evolution, having worked with Oprah Winfrey for over 20 years. She is now the author of the new book, The Beautiful No, and other tales of trial, transcendence, and transformation. Welcome to the show, Sheri. We are so excited to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I think I watched, I don't know how many interviews with Oprah, how many behind the scenes with you, and I think Oprah was like, I'm never nervous until it came to the Obamas. And I was like, I'm not usually nervous, but I was a little nervous before today's show.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. Well, if you saw that behind the scenes show, you know I am easy breezy.
You are, I feel like you're like a rock star though to me. It's been a long time coming with Sally Lou Loveman years ago saying you have to meet her. And I've sort of been watching you and stalking you for a while.
And then we did finally meet.
And we did.
Yes, we did finally meet. And that was fun. That was a great night.
It was an amazing night at my friend Michelle's, as you have been obviously on a mission, on an amazing book tour. And The Beautiful No is such an inspirational story that really applies to the women in our audience. Many are in the process of their own evolution, many reinventions and second acts. There is something I want to read from your book that really applies to that. You write, I have reframed my view of my own life, realizing that I have a whole second half to create. But I also understand that on a quantum level, all I have is today, this day. And I have squandered more than my share of this days on things that didn't matter to me, worries that never materialized, people pleasing that yielded nothing but my own resentment. I know in every cell of my being that I want to live the life of my dreams. And I know that it must begin with a real reckoning, an honest to goodness, bone-crunching, gut-wrenching rebuild, a true change of heart, body, mind, and spirit, along with romantic love, career, family, and friends, all of it. Nothing else will be enough. It's powerful.
Yes, that was the beginning of my reckoning, which was I found myself at 56 years old, and it was very clear to everyone, including me, that I had manifested the career of my dreams. But there were a lot of things going on in the background for me that I had been very unconscious about, that I had been ignoring, and in the final analysis, as I was looking at my 56-year-old life, I realized I wasn't living the life of my dreams, and like many of us in the middle of age, the middle of life, it's very easy when we're here's my philosophy, that we're raised by the two generations of women before us. So my mom was raised by a mom of that generation, my grandmother. And in those two generations, it wasn't an acceptable thing to take great care of yourself, to make radical self-care a top priority, to put yourself first. And it was very much the servant mother, the servant wife. Even though my grandmother worked outside of the home, my mom did not. But there was a kind of thing of, you're just on your feet in service to everybody and everything, the organizations you volunteer for, the children you raise, the job you have. And I think that in many ways, for those of us in the middle of life now, we have to peel back those belief systems that we don't even understand are running our life, in order to take that fresh view and say, what would happen to me in my life if I put myself first and loved myself most.
It's a beautiful thought awareness awakening. You said something in, I don't know if it was an interview or I think it was in your book. I used this juicy job to be unconscious in my life. I think that's a pretty universal feeling, especially at midlife when we have that awareness.
Yeah, because, and I think this is, women of a younger generation are more comfortable at a younger age of diving right into their stuff. There's so, life coaching is a mainstream thing now. And that kind of material and content is readily available anywhere, in this day and age. I think that, for women in the middle of life like me, I call it the middle of life because midlife or middle aged, I think those concepts have been ruined with notions about being too old and being nearly done. But what I think for us, it's that what can we do? Like once we've peeled away all the things we can't do, all the ways we need to serve other people, and we bring it back to ourselves. I think that becomes the real opportunity where we say, I don't really care about what anybody thinks anymore, because that practice really didn't serve me. So I'm not really interested in pleasing everybody. I am interested in making sure I don't waste one more day of the life I have left. And what is that going to look like?
So Oprah talks a lot about aha moments. Clearly, you lived in a world of aha moments.
I did.
But I believe she also said something about the universe sends us sort of signs and they get louder and louder and louder, or those aha moments become screams. So take us back to that moment where you made that decision, but I'm assuming it was a process. It was getting louder and louder, more and more aha moments, and then there was a final moment.
There wasn't any final moment. Mm-hmm. It really wasn't like that. It's really more, that quickening. That's the better word for it. It's like a quickening. I used my job to be unconscious about the other areas of my life that didn't come as easy for me. A lot of women my age use raising children to put all of their focus on that and outside of themselves to avoid the areas of their life that aren't as easy for them, like taking great care of their body, making sure they have a passionate, juicy, romantic love life, making sure that their friendships are nurturing and uplifting and supportive instead of, well, we're friends, so I guess I'll just put up with whatever for however long. So I call it the quickening because one of my greatest friends of 30 years, Nancy, who's also my podcast co-host for the Sheri Nancy Show, we'd have these Chardonnay dreamstorming sessions in my backyard, and Nancy's story was different, but we had the same kinds of feelings. I had the big Oprah career. Nancy was a working mom who raised two great kids, and we both had that feeling like, okay, so her kids are graduated. I'm ready to move out of my high profile, high stress staff job working for someone else. And it's like, is this it? I mean, gosh, hard to top for either one of us, but is this it? Because it seemed like there were so many other things that we still had dreams around. And, I could honestly say for myself, it had been so long since I'd even considered or even had a conversation with myself about what my dreams were for my health and wellness, for romance, for my home, for, my way of being in the world, that I hadn't even considered the possibility. What if I want something completely different in all those areas from what I'm living?
And that's basically the 8 pillars. You have 8 pillars, and a lot of that is internal.
Yeah. And so that's what, Nancy and I are very similar, and maybe some of your audience can relate that, I can get really fired up and gung ho and then all in. And then, within a month, I'm slowly, back to my old ways, which are being unconscious, not being as mindful, not taking that next right step. And so when we founded the Pillar Life and those 8 pillars, we did it specifically to guide ourselves. We wanted a tangible path where we could check in with ourselves and make sure that we were moving in exactly the direction that we wish to move in 8 specific areas of our lives that really much encompass all of life, and that we wouldn't go unconscious again, that we wouldn't let 5 years go by and say, darn it, I was going to travel more. Oh man, I was going to expand my circle of friendship and support, or I was really going to tend to my love life, which is what happened to me all the time. I'd say, I'd really like to take Italian one day. 10 years later, haven't done it, and until finally at 56, I said, I am going to move my bucket list into my life list. And I'm going to begin living that life of my dreams that I know I'm supposed to be living.
Well, before you really spent your life producing other people's stories.
Right.
Now you're producing your own story, and you're really opening up your inner world and your fears and your greatest, vulnerabilities. So let's talk about that.
Oh my gosh. Well, listen, writing a book is, I have such respect for writers, and I must tell you, writing a book is not the easiest thing in the world. And especially when you feeling like you're taking off your skin and walking around naked in front of strangers. But my experience, but anyway, and that is true. And then I'd say to myself as well, then don't do it, because you have to honor the opportunity. You have to honor the opportunity and be as vulnerable and honest as you possibly can manage at this moment in your life. So yes, there are times when I'm out here on the book tour and I'm talking to people and I realize that everybody knows everything, all the things that I used to feel such shame about, or that I kind of was like, I just keep it in a corner and wouldn't even necessarily discuss with some of my closest friends. I'm sure there's a lot of people in my family who are like, wow, they're like really proud of me, but I'm sure at the same time, they're kind of surprised that I'm being so open. But here's the interesting thing. For 18 months, I've been doing a podcast with one of my best friends and talking about all kinds of things. And I think that was the warm up for this. And the miraculous, most amazing thing is everybody's got their stuff. How could I not know that? Working on the Oprah show for so many years. How could I not know that? I produced those stories.
Yeah, you are so incredibly raw and beautifully vulnerable in your book. I mean, here we are in the shower with you after going through liposuction, and your friends are seeing you. The stories you share are absolutely unbelievable.
I know.
When you
Some
sat
of the
down,
stories are quite hilarious, I have to say. The liposuction was it was painful, but very funny. It was very funny. There's a lot of
literally and figuratively. So when you sat down to do this process, did you see yourself going these places? I mean, you really went deep.
Yeah. Well, like all things, in the end, if you can come to alignment, if you do it from a really pure heart, I think that you almost are downloading. I felt many times when I'd sit there, because sometimes I wouldn't be ready. Like, okay, it's time to write this story about this event that was super painful. And I'd say, I don't have it yet. And, then there would come a time when it's almost like you soften, you open, and then the universe rises up to help you. And what I continue to learn in every city and every conversation is this, that shame and light cannot coexist. That all the things that I thought were embarrassing or that I was ashamed of, that I didn't think I was very good at, or I think my failures, my mistakes, those are the things that once they're out in the light, they're completely transformed. It's like alchemy. It's like spiritual alchemy. They're completely transformed. They become a healing connective touch point to some other person that I'm speaking to who's read the book. And that's gold. It's amazing.
Could you have ever written this book not being a midlife woman?
No, I don't think so. Again, I go back to there's some generational differences, and I am a big fan of women in their 20s and early 30s, and I marvel at them a little bit, I must tell you. Like I remember even when I was president of OWN, that position had me in tons of meetings, and I'd be in meetings with 20-year-olds and early 30-year-olds who were, running multi-million dollar businesses that they created. And of course they were stressed. And of course they were, you know, uh, uncertain about some things, but they weren't going to miss their massage on Saturday afternoon. They weren't going to miss brunch with their friends on Sunday. And I remember, like all those times, I just continue to think, I'm so glad for you. I'm so glad for you that that matters more than anything.
That is a whole new world, isn't it? It was definitely, I know I was living a lot more unconsciously. So you talk about this pivot point at midlife of spending the first half of your life really being a seeker, and then now becoming a finder, really your own counsel, your own guru.
That's right. And that's one of the things, it's one of the gifts of the chair I sat in at the Oprah show is I saw some of the world's most prolific thought leaders and authors and teachers and wisdom keepers come and go. And, I took copious notes. I marked their words. I couldn't integrate most of it, or I wouldn't. Couldn't's not the right word. It was wouldn't. But, at the end of the day, what I can see with great clarity, that when you really want to get to the next level, and all those people are super helpful in breaking you open and giving you new language and concepts and helping you. Like I could look at my bookshelf and tell you my spiritual journey, but there's a certain point in time where you're going to have to become your own capital L, capital C life coach, or your own expert, capital E. You're not going to be able to give up responsibility to another person for that. And that's kind of where that's the pool I've been swimming in the last 3 years, is really understanding what that means to become the expert of my own life, to become the curator of my own life experience. What comes in, I decide. I'm the gatekeeper. I'm not just at the whim of whatever blows in the door. I have to open it. So I'm being much more mindful about content I let in, about people I let in, and not in a judgy way, but in a best match way. I want things that are a match to where I want to be and how I want to feel.
Sounds like you're very awake and aware, and healthy boundaries. And like you said, if it's not an additive in my life, it's not going to make me feel better, happier, all those things. Your new compass is happiness, I believe you shared.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. That was a big realization for me, especially when I was working on the book and going back to like my early years, all my mistakes and the crazy twists and turns, was that I had made misery my compass. Like I would only make a change when things were so bad I couldn't stand it. And then I thought, well, geez, what if I flipped that? What if I made happiness my compass? And I always moved in the direction and made choices in the direction of things that felt good. And then, to top it off, it's kind of like the view from the Learjet in the sky is that the things that we want in all the areas of our life, we want them because we think they will make us happy. It's a big teaching of my spiritual teacher, Abraham Hicks. That is the end game. You want happiness. So what would happen if that just became your directional compass? Like, you're not going to do things you don't want to do. You're not going to be motivated out of guilt or fear. You're going to move in the direction of what feels good. And you're going to pay attention to what are the things and experiences that feel good. And you're going to load your life up with more of that. That was one of the most epiphanal moments for me and Nancy over probably our second bottle of Chardonnay in my backyard was, if you start taking care of yourself, you might have another whole half of life to live. What are you going to do with that half? It's like a second chance.
We are having a second chance right now. You're having a second chance at everything and creating your life your way, being the CEO of your own second half.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty cool.
So you are also in the process of really redefining what success is. So let's talk about that. Now, success is really more about meaning.
Yeah, I mean, I am redefining success, but here's the thing. I think what people get a little frightened of, that if you say I'm redefining success, it means it's going to be more pure, and there's not going to be any goodies, like the great fun things of life. And I actually, there's still a lot of I think creating material things and manifesting material things, I think, is great fun for somebody who is a diligent, expansive manifester. The thing that I am redefining is I'm redefining the concept of work, personal life, professional life. I always had such a struggle with that work-life balance concept, and I have literally eliminated that from my thinking and from my languaging. It's no longer a concept that I compare myself to, judge myself by. I find it very unhelpful. And where I'm headed to now, what I'm developing for myself is really an integrated life. And one of the ways that's helpful to think about it is this is what I do for myself is, again, from that big, huge, overarching vision, you are the star in your life story. And there's this play going on, this theater, and there's all these different sets. And where you go to a meeting is a set, and where you cook dinner is a set, and all these different fellow castmates, these relationships. But what we're really striving for is an integrated life, where it isn't like I'm totally focused on work, then I shut it down, and then now let me try to be totally present in a personal moment, and then what's personal and what's work, and that kind of big ball of wax. I find trying to make sense of it very unenlightened. And what feels really good to me is when I look at my life more like a landscape. There's trees, there's an ocean, there's a lake, there's a this, there's a that. So it's kind of like a lifescape. And then if I've done my internal work and I'm in alignment, and for me, what is that? That's probably meditating twice a day, doing a little yoga, make sure I move my body, having a big, huge plant-based something or other, making sure I'm getting enough water, doing some daydreaming, like all those little practices that keep me in alignment. If I'm doing all that, then I'm tapped in, and I will flow my attention to the different areas of my life like I'm oozing energy, as opposed to a very definitive linear schedule, an hour here, an hour here, an hour here, an hour there.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from you is you've gone from your head into your heart. You're
Yeah.
really embodying, like feeling through everything. And
Yeah.
these things aren't delineated. They're all holistic, right?
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is I really just want to allow for that universal magic, for divine intelligence to join forces with me in creating things. And I spent a lot of time in that very masculine, get it done, do it, to big to-do list energy. And, it can be very successful. It can also be very exhausting. And now I'm experimenting with something different, which is, can I create as artfully and successfully and more happily by really employing those spiritual principles that I believe in?
So you're shifting from a doing into a beingness, which I think is a natural progression that sort of happens when we start waking up at
Yeah.
midlife.
Yeah.
What's the greatest surprise of this new second act for you?
Well, I'm trying to think, what am I surprised by? Oh, I'm surprised by how much I love stillness. I'm surprised how much I love my alone time. I remember in earlier decades having to fill up the hours, or fill things up with the TV on all the time or music on all the time, and plans, 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 plans. Um, I really like that sense of stillness, so that surprises me. Um, the capacity for to be in the middle of my life and experience so much joy and wonder already, and all of a sudden to shift course, to tweak some things about how I go about expressing myself in daily life, and to see how much more joy is possible, shocks me. It shocks me. It continues to shock me, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I live in a small town in Napa Valley, and I was going to a meeting with a new naturopath, a new integrative doctor I was looking for. And so I had a meeting with her, and I came out, and I mean, my town is very small. I came out, I walked down the sidewalk, I was hit by this blast of warm Northern California sun. And the beauty of it almost brought me to my knees. And I would not have even noticed that in another life.
You're really stopping to smell the
I'd have been like,
roses,
it's
like
sunny.
literally.
Where are my sunglasses? I mean,
Well, you really talk about.
I gotta get back to work.
Yeah. Well, I think when we slow down, we don't miss those moments, and those moments really add up to be our life if we're fully present.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's that great quote. How you spend your days is how you spend your life, or something like that. But it becomes really clear, when you're talking about reimagining, reinventing your life in the middle of life. And like, what do I do? It's so hard, and I get it. It can seem very overwhelming. But honestly, as we both know, the changes begin with the tiniest of things. I was talking to somebody who's like, I just don't know where to begin. I mean, and it was a depressing story, that's for sure. And I said, drink a glass of water, walk around the block, uh, take 5 deep breaths, sit on your couch and take 5 deep breaths, like 10 things that were so simple. And I said, and here's how you're going to be fooled. You're going to think that's so simple and so little. But those things added together, it's what starts to stir the hope fires. All of a sudden, you start to feel just a little bit better. And then you go, okay, What else could I do? You know, that felt good. The better you feel, the more hope comes in. The more hopeful you feel, the more things start happening. And then the magic begins.
You talked about it earlier when you were talking about the writing process and that sort of contraction and expansion that happens. And if we sit
Yeah,
down and we write, but it's not coming through, get up, go do something else and allow that space and inspiration to come through.
for
It works
sure.
every time. Yeah. So what advice do you have for women out there who are terrified to be vulnerable?
Yeah. Well, I come back to you. I'm back from the land of vulnerability, and I'm here with my report that it doesn't hurt. It's not painful. It actually is super healing. And that you'll continue to be shocked that we're really all the same. Everybody has their drawers full of crap they don't want anybody to know about and they don't want anybody to see. Um, the mask or facade that we create, that we're impenetrable, that we don't care, that we can't be hurt. All those things are really, those are just blocks that keep us from living that life of our dreams. And the minute that, and that would have been me. I would have been like, nope, 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 walls, 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 walls. And this healing process I've gone through with the beautiful no, and being out in the world with it, um, it probably is the miracle of my life.
Wow. That's powerful. What I hear from you is we tell ourselves a lot of stories that aren't necessarily true. So you write something in your book that I loved, and you said, but this time the plot is different. For those of us in the middle of life, we're in red zone territory now. This is no longer about wearing the daring, somewhat bare dress to whatever occasion or hitting an important birthday at a lighter body weight so we won't go off the deep end. This is now about the very quality of the rest of our minutes on Earth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the sobering thought. And I will tell you that, having a friendship that's super intentional, like my friendship with Nancy, those were the kinds of things we'd said to ourselves, like, okay, we both believe it's never too late to live the life of your dreams. We both believe that. We totally believe it. It's never too late. But if not now, when? And I think for me, since I had done so many things and started and stopped and two steps forward, that I also had this piece of it for me that was, and if not now, maybe never. And even on this book tour, I imagine myself at 95 years old. Let's say I'm lucky enough to get there, and my choices bring me to that moment. And I am going to look back on that time, that window when I was 56, and I had a choice to make, that I was going to take my life so tenderly and with so much love and compassion in my own hands, and I was going to blow it up sky high and have it be the life of my dreams that I know I'm supposed to be living. And I made that choice and I did it. And then I thought about being 95 and thinking, oh gosh, Sheri, there was this window. You were right there. You were so close, but you just didn't do it. You just didn't do it. And you basically let the clock run out for 40 years. And that's the import of the decision we all get to make. And
There's so much courage in the decision you made too. That most people probably said, what are you doing leaving Oprah? There's immense courage in what you did.
yeah, well, I think when divine timing comes along, divine timing comes along.
Yeah, like she says, it knocks pretty loud by the end there. So
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't read anywhere else. Has Oprah read your book? Do you know if she has?
Well, I definitely sent it to her, and I was approved for publishing, so I would assume she has. And
Yeah.
I would also assume that she would want me to stand on my own 2 feet, and that she would wish me total well with it.
I would imagine so too. So there are many women out there in their audience that have a story in their heart. They, maybe their dream is a book like you. What would you say to them if they have no idea where to begin?
Do you mean specifically if they want to write a book?
If they want to write a book, if they want to go share their story.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm going to say. And there's plenty of places you can go. I have a great friend who is the author incubator in Washington, D.C. I was just out there doing a book event, and she helps people write their first books. And she's amazing. But here's how I'm going to answer that question. There is no story that we're ever going to tell more important than the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. And that has, even as a professional storyteller and a professional dream come true maker, I really had to give that serious thought that if I wanted to change the trajectory of my life, if I wanted to be in the full on joyride, then I was going to have to really focus and rewrite and tweak and revise some more the story I was telling myself about my life in my own head. And, I think for a lot of us, that story goes on autopilot. It's on a loop. It's over and over. And for most of us of a certain generation, the story isn't very kind. It's very harsh. It's very judgmental. It seeks out our faults and highlights them left and right to the point where we almost don't have the confidence to walk into a room sometimes because we're not enough this or we're too this. So taking charge of that story, becoming the author of that story in a deeply significant way, and really focusing on what that language is, what those words are, what you're saying to yourself, that is the beginning of the transformation of everything in your life. And from there, then you can go and write your book.
I love that you shared that, because to me, I don't call it a midlife crisis. I call it a midlife awakening. That was my experience, the experience of many of these women. And I think that's really the pivotal point. You get to this point in your life where you can't lie to yourself anymore. And you have to look at the stories you're telling yourself and why my life isn't working out, why I'm not living the life of my dreams. Well, maybe that story I'm telling myself doesn't match the person I've always desired to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really powerful place to leave us today. So if people want to find your book, let us know where to find your book, where to find your website, where to find your podcast.
I'll tell you everything. There is a site for the book. It's called thebeautifulno.com. There are all the links to buy. And then what's really cool is we developed a 64-page free companion workbook that's downloadable, and you can get that at thebeautifulno.com. The podcast is the Sheri and Nancy Show. It's on all the podcast platforms. We're doing great. I think we're heading up to about 2 million downloads, which I can't even believe.
That's amazing.
I know, it's pretty great. And at thebeautifulno.com, you'll also see I'll be out on the road doing events. Nancy's going to join me at a couple of those, so we'll do a little podcast action along with the book event. And that's where you can find me.
That's wonderful. Well, if you come back to LA, definitely let me know. I got to meet you at an event, which was wonderful. But we've got a whole tribe here that I'm sure would love to meet you here.
That's great.
Yeah, amazing. So what would be your dream in this next half for you to manifest other than where you're at right now? If there's anything that you could bring into your life from now on, what would it be?
Oh, yes. I'm in the process of manifesting my great soulmate love. He's on his way. I can almost see his face. And honestly, I mean, I am living my dream right now. Everything else is a little of this, a little of that. Maybe I'd like to live in Italy for a year. I still want to keep learning things. I want to do some more other kinds of travel. I want to learn to scuba dive. I might want to learn to tango. I'm gardening for the first time. I have like gigantic beds planted. I mean, I'm giving things away. I'm literally giving things away because, of course, you get about 10,000 zucchinis from one plant. But my hands are in the dirt. I am loving my new small town life, and I'm being very mindful that I'm staying on course, and that I'm elevating my life as I committed to doing.
Sounds like you are on an amazing path, an intentional path, a fully conscious life, a fully present life that is full of all kinds of amazing changes in your second act. So thank you so much for being with us today. I know you are changing many lives out there. You've definitely changed mine and touched mine, and obviously Oprah as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for being here today. Make sure to check out Sheri's book. You can get it on Amazon. Obviously, check out her website at pillars.com and her amazing podcast that I find absolutely heartwarming and delightful. Thank you for being part of the Forever Fierce Revolution. And with that, cheers, beauties. Stay fierce.